afternoon on this Sabbath. That's right, we are going to trust and obey the Lord. Where His will goes is where we go. Our dreams are small, His are large. That is the whole goal of us, to do as He says. Tonight we'll be talking about free will and Yahweh's patience. And as I've stated before in my very first 2 or 3 videos, how great does the place have to be for you to worship the Lord? I'm here in a barn, converted, very little heat, yet comfortable. Let's lower our standards so we can spread the word of the Lord and not be worried about building funds and global missions. We have work to do here locally. We have work to do here in the United States. I don't know if many people know this, but America now is in 3rd place for people to coming here from other countries. You think that's hard to believe. They're coming from other countries to mission here. Yeah, we're sending people around the globe. So we're going to be going over to the podium later. We'll be talking about the free will, which is in Exodus. I know a lot of people talk about the Old Testament, old and angry God. We're going to show where He had free will. He didn't make them do anything. We're going to talk about His patience. We're going to talk about the Egyptians who had to give, or who gave the Israelites all the things they needed to build the tabernacle. And the Israelites gave them everything. Just please leave. This was during the time of the plagues, and they knew it was Yahweh bringing these plagues. So they were like, please, take the money, take the gold, earrings, trinkets, wool, yarn, dye, whatever you need, leave. And if anybody ever wanted to know what happened to Egypt, I'd read this section of the Bible. We're also going to talk about Moses told them to stop bringing supplies after they were building the tabernacle, which is a rare thing to do in this day and time for any priest, missionary, whoever, to say, we have enough money, thank you. That was one of the quotes they got. One of the translators during the 1500s, he got killed for the column, the notes that he put in the column. We'll talk about that later. And the Pope and the King hated those notes. They despised those notes because they were calling them out. They were calling out the King. They were calling out the Pope, the Roman Catholic Church. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. This is what it says. This is what we're talking about. How are you doing this, but telling us to live this way? So those will be some of the items we're going to go over, but we're going to go to the pedestal, the podium, and we're going to read a little bit, and then we're going to have some scriptures, and then we're going to break bread and have a meal, and to remember Yahweh and Yeshua, who died for our sins. Thank you for being here. As always, EcclesiaUSA.com. Go sign up, share, like, and let everyone know you can come here on Sabbath and maybe learn a little bit, read a little bit, but main thing is congregate together via a video. But we can still congregate together, share the word, and get the message out. So we'll talk to you soon over at the podium. Thank you much. There's no... Okay, as I said earlier, we'll be talking about the free will. So here in the Israelite slaves were leaving Egypt, just seeing the miracles at the Red Sea. And when Moses was describing to them Yahweh's 10 Commandments and how to build the altar, the tent of meeting, and all the materials needed, God, Yahweh, gave them free will. And we can read this in Exodus 35, 20 through 36. So we'll read those scriptures right now, and then we'll have our discussion. There's no other way. Then all the congregations of the sons of Israel departed from Moses' presence, and everyone whose heart stirred him, and everyone whose spirit moved him, came and brought the Lord's contribution for the work of the tent of meetings, and for all its services, and for all the holy garments. Then all whose hearts moved them, both men and women, came and brought brooches and earrings and signet rings and bracelets, all articles of gold. So did every man who presented an offering of gold to the Lord. And every man who had in his possession blue and purple and scarlet materials, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skin dyed red, and porpoise skins, brought them. Everyone could make a contribution of silver and bronze, brought the Lord's contribution. And every man who had in his possession acacia wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the skilled women spun their hands, and brought what they had spun in blue and purple scarlet material, and in fine linen. And all the women whose hearts stirred with a skill spun the goat's hair. And the rulers brought the onyx stones, and the stones for setting for the ephod, and the breastpiece, and the spice, and the oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant incense. The Israelites, all the men and women whose heart moved them to bring material for all the work which the Lord had commanded through Moses to be done, brought a free will offering to the Lord. Then Moses said to the sons of Israel, See, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, the son of Ur, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And he has filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all craftsmanship, to make designs for working in the gold, and in silver, and in bronze, and the cutting of the stones for settings, and in the carvings of wood, so as to perform in every inventive work. He also has put in his heart to teach both he and Oleb, the son of Ashimach, of the tribe of Dan. He has filled them with skill to perform every work of an engraver, and of a designer, and of an embroiderer in blue, and in purple, and in scarlet material, and in fine linen, and of a weaver, as performers of every work and makers of design. Now we'll skip down a little bit in chapter 36. Then Moses called Bezalel and Oholiab, and every skillful person in whom the Lord had put skill, everyone whose heart stirred him, to come to the work to perform it. And they received from Moses all the contributions which the sons of Israel had brought to perform the work in the construction of the sanctuary. And they still continued bringing to him free will offerings every morning. And all the skillful men who were performing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work which he was performing. And they said to Moses, The people are bringing much more than enough for the construction work which the Lord commanded us to perform. So Moses issued a command, and a proclamation was circulated throughout the camp, saying, Let neither man or woman any longer perform work for the contributions of the sanctuary. Thus the people were restrained from bringing any more, for the material they had was sufficient and more than enough for all the work to perform. So those who are willing was mentioned multiple times in those scriptures. God did not force them to follow him and his will. Even back in the Old Testament Bible, they could have taken their plunder from the Egyptians and left without Yahweh's protection. If you recall, they were instructed before leaving Egypt, and after the plagues have started, to go ask for materials from the Egyptians that they would need to build the temple. And the Egyptians who wanted them out, gone, would give them anything to end Yahweh's wrath. And they gave them substantial amount of gold, silver, yarn, etc. Anything for them to leave. They would lose their covenant with the Lord, but they were free to not participate far as giving goes. That's why he kept saying, if your heart moved you, if the Spirit moved you. Now the other interesting part was, when does the leader of any nation or organized religion today say, we have enough money, we have enough stuff? The skilled laborers told Moses they had plenty to complete all of the Lord asked them to build. And Moses commanded the men and women to stop bringing materials. This scripture was one of the comments referred to in the notes of the Bible that got one of the translators burnt at the stake. Because in the notes he said, when has a Roman Catholic priest or the Vatican ever said, we have plenty of money, don't give anymore, we've got enough to take care of us? These are one of the notes that was in the Bible during the translations that I talked about in the videos, how we got our Bibles from 1300 up until 1600. These are one of the notes that was in there, that the king, it was Henry VIII, and Pope Leo V didn't like those notes. That book was illegal and had to be banished. And anyone that wrote it was killed, and friends were killed with those Bibles tied around their necks. That's how bad they didn't want these Bibles to be preached and to read to the common people. Kind of like today, if we can keep you ignorant and not reading, we can tell you everything that you need to know. Trust us. That's where we are today with our politicians, just ruling over us, constantly needing more money. It doesn't end. Their greed, their need, their power is what the problem is. So we go on. The king and the pope could not have this insurrection, and he was punished for his decrees against the pope and the king. Authority figures who are corrupt keep on asking for more materials when they should have all they need for the needs of the people. Throughout the rest of the Bible stories, you will see and read about kings, queens, priests, Pharisees, rulers, governors, emperors, and all the leaders and representatives of the people never have enough money, power, and control. They abuse their leadership. They turn their position from servant to authoritarian. When this occurs, God will step in. When the people begin to pray against the oppressor and the overbearing actions of a leader, Yahweh, in His time, will step in and allow another to take out the oppressor. This is exactly what happened during the time of what's going on in Egypt and Pharaoh's. Canaan had to get so bad, and it took 450 years for them to hit a limit to where Yahweh can go, Moses, take your people in and wipe them out. Because they're past no control. There's no repenting in them. Now there's another story about that, about the 12 spies and why they didn't take Canaan and what happened to them. They spent 40 years in the desert because they didn't trust God and have faith to make that leap. 2 of them did. 2 of the tribes did. And those 2 tribes were the ones that made it to Canaan by Joshua with the 2nd generation. The 1st generation all died. They lacked any faith. They just watched from Goshen 10 plagues. 5 of them they endured. The other 5 they did not. So they knew that Yahweh was behind this. Pharaoh knew it. The Egyptians knew it. That's why they told them, you've got to get these people out of here. So these Israelites saw those miracles. Then they saw the Red Sea miracles. where they were able to cross on dry land. And then, not only that, the Roman guards, the Roman army, horses, chariots, all their sins were washed away behind them. They saw all these miracles. And within 40 days, they're right back worshiping a golden calf. Today we have free will to be with Yahweh and do His work. If you choose to do His work and accept His blessings, then you must accept your curses if you not live and act as He says. I will build my church. He did not say, how would you like me to build your church? He didn't ask us. A leader leads with compassion, but a nation needs laws if a people are lawless. If the nation as a collective group loves Yahweh with all they have, mind, spirit, and soul, and does not in any way do anything against his brother, no more laws of the nation are needed. The Judaism laws was God's laws for them to live by during that time to be a great nation. Some of the laws, the Jews and the Judaisms of that religion, they can't do them now. They're not applicable. If Moses was alive today, he would tell you, don't run red lights. Put your cart back in the buggy over there. Don't harm your brother in these ways. Because this is what all those laws really bow down to. Love God with all your might, with all your heart, and all your soul, and love your neighbor. All of them wrapped up in those two. Do these, and we'll become a great nation. Do these, and you will prosper, because you're doing as He said. The Lord said, which I will do as I promised, and bless you. Don't do as I say, and I must do corrective action to the point of death, if that's what it takes to keep my nation alive. If you choose me, I will follow. I will. If you choose me, my will for you, Yahweh will promise and keep His promise to this day. He has done. He never has lied to us. And those who were dancing around the golden calf showed their lack of faith and their suspicious minds. Moses wasn't gone more than 40 days when he told them, I'm going to see Yahweh. By the time he came back, Aaron had already built his calf and they're dancing around it. And as we said earlier, if you're going to live with Him, you have to obey Him. There was 23,000 people taken out that day by the priests. God told Moses, go take care of them. He can't have people who's going to kill and destroy His nation, what He built. That's what the Old Testament was about. Do these rules and laws, and you'll survive as a nation. Now, they didn't take Canaan because they came back and said, 10 of the tribes said, they're too big, they're giants, we'll never beat them. 2 of them came back and said, on God's shoulders, He said we can take them, and we can. That's the faith that we're to have. Nowhere in our Bible does it tell us to be timid, weak. Meek doesn't mean geek or weak. Meek in those times meant surrender to God's will. Noah surrendered to God's will by building that ship. He was told to do it. He went and done it. Moses was meek. He was told to take this group of people and get them out of Egypt. And here's how to do it. You go to Pharaoh and tell him this. You go to Pharaoh and tell him this. Moses was meek he done Yahweh's will. Yeshua was meek when he went into the temples and took them out twice, cleaned them out, tore the tables over. You've got to know something now. This is not a hippie, thin, emaciated Jesus. This is a carpenter, a builder, a man of above average height of Jews. He could tear that place apart, and he did. And they didn't mess with him. He was meek. What he did for God was God's will. That made him meek. We're to be meek, not timid. Right now, I guarantee you, if I went to some of the church buildings, the congregations, what Yeshua tore up, he got rid of the money changers. He got rid of all the animals that was in there. He called them all out what they were doing. He said, you will not have my Father's place a marketplace. His worship place a marketplace. I bet today, since we just got through a pagan holiday of Valentine's Day, I bet there was many Valentines and decorations hanging inside of his church buildings. Just like what happened during the 12 days of Christmas, that pagan holiday. Do you think if Yeshua came into any of these church buildings, he would throw this stuff out? He says, don't do as the pagans do. And the pagans were doing all of these back then. These are the same. These are the exact same things that were going on then. The exact same ceremonies. Worshipping other gods. Worshipping the fertility god. Worshipping the sun god. And all of this stuff had everything to do with sexual misconduct. This Valentino, this Saint Valentino, that started in 429, which came through Catholics and Catholicism. They introduced it. Which is odd, is in 1969, Catholicism, the high priest and the Catholics said, we got to get that out of there. If they said it's got to get out there, listen, it must be bad. Because they're wrapped up in a lot of stuff. And I'm not talking about our average Catholic worshiper. I'm talking about the Vatican and up. The organized part, not the worshiping people. I say that all the time. When I'm talking about Catholics, Methodists, Baptists, I'm talking about the organized religion, not the worshiper. So when I say these things, it upsets people. But it's in the characteristics of Yeshua and Yahweh. And the only way you learn those characteristics is to read this book. I didn't know that. I thought we were all right. Thought we were doing fine. Until I started reading it. And this is about self-judgment. I will not put any judgment on you. If you want to have Valentine's Day, Saint whatever day, what's that green one? Saint Patrick's. St. Patrick's Day. If you want to do all that, do it. But please, as we just read, His will, not ours. He said, separate yourself from all of this. Not my judgment. His. It says that. Don't do as the pagans do. And you be your own judge to Him. You compare this way, not outward. Well, they showed their lack of faith by not taking Cain, and they were lost for 40 years. We show our lack of faith because we get lost. We get lost in our daily lives. We let the world come over us. And we've all heard that. Christians, disciples of Christ, believers, are to be the lifeboat in the world and not the world in the lifeboat. Well, all these pagan festivals and all that, you're just bringing all of that in, and it has nothing to do with our salvation. So why do it? Why do it? Why burden yourself? Why burden other people with it? But here we are, studying His Word, following in His will. Those who are willing was mentioned 4 or 5 times in that brief section. If your heart moved you, that means give all that stuff up. And for me to tell people there's free will in Exodus, or love your brother like your neighbor in Deuteronomy, people question it. What are you talking about? That's the Old Testament God. He was mean and angry. I just told you how much He loved His people and how He wanted people to turn around. It took Him 450 years for Canaan to get to a tipping point. I read to you last week about Nahum, Amos, Micah, and Jonah, who they were talking to. Jonah told the Assyrians, you're behaving and you're treating the Jews, the people of God's people at that time, you're treating us bad, and you guys are misbehaving. Jonah told them that. It took 150 years for Nahum to come in and say, hey, God's not bad, and God's mad. He's simmered over. He's getting ready to bull. He's patient, though. Within 5 years, Assyria was demolished, and Nineveh was gone. I find it interesting that the Americans had slaves from 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900. Even though they were supposed to be free, they weren't really free until the 1960s. That's almost 450 years for their freedom. For everyone to see, that's not right, this is wrong, we've got to do something. And if we'll notice, some of the same plagues are going on today to get rid of idols, because that's what those plagues were for, is to get rid of idols. And to show Yahweh's in charge. He's doing it right now. Plenty of examples. But for us today, on this Sabbath, trust and obey. I know it's simple in that song, and there's no other way. You lift your sails and let the Spirit of the Lord move you. Because the Spirit of the Lord moved these people. These people for 450 years did nothing but bricks, make bricks, get straw to make bricks, make bricks, get straw to make bricks, brick for 450 years. After that, during this time when they were building the temple, the Spirit of the Lord gave them these abilities. He said, here's how you do this. Here's how you, and he said he made them master metal makers, master embroideries, master. He showed them how to do things. This is how you become a great nation. He kept telling them, if you will quit doing these things, you will become a great nation. Because he fought them every step of the way, it took 1,000 years. And then it only took 500 years for it to crumble after David, the great King David, committed 5 sins in one afternoon over Bathsheba. And then after that, it took 500 years before they lost it all. And they've been imprisoned ever since, living from here to there. Trust and obey. We don't like that word, obey. I don't like it. I don't like it when man tells me to obey. But for my fellow brother, I'll do for him. But I'll do as Yeshua said, give Caesar to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give God to what is God's. And that's what he did on the day he cleaned out the temple. And it's what we should be doing today. I'm not voting for people of either category any longer who are not doing God's will. Because they're there for that reason. Read Romans 13. They're put there for us. They're to be servants for us. Especially here in America, we don't have kings and queens. We have one. Pre-Judaism laws, they had the 10 Commandments. Oh, I lost that. They had the 10 Commandments. They didn't need any other rules and laws. That was it. 10 Commandments. Love God. And that's it. Love your brother like you would love yourself. Wraps up the other ones. Then the Sabbath. Today, we have the same thing. We came here for the same freedom. But we can't stop harming ourselves by harming our brothers. These Pharisees, these rulers of the law that we have today, we call them organized religion, judges and politicians, are doing the exact same thing that this whole entire Bible was telling them to quit doing. Some of the prophets were telling the people, get up off your butts and get moving and build the temple that's been destroyed. Today, get off your butts and get moving. You are your temple. You are the temple. You are your tithe, your time, your money, your love, your kindness. We talked about judges and rewards 2 weeks ago. That's what this is about. We had someone tell us to make America great again. To some of the people, I see that. It's not great. But I will tell you this. In 1850, America was railroaded and started going to a different direction. We had a different path. And what did we do? We lost faith. We lost belief. We put our faith and belief in man. Politicians, science, changed the directory of where we were going. We'll talk about that. How the Bible and science were influenced between 1850 to 1930. But we had a different trajectory. And a couple books changed it. But for us today, I know standing here, these words are real. You can't explain for me standing here. That's why I know these words are real. I've had more messages about wisdom and knowledge and then read it in this book than I've read it in this book and then received it. Stay in it. Read it. His Spirit will make you a master of whatever you're supposed to be. Metal worker, teacher, preacher, embroiderer. He will tell you to drink your cup. Yeshua had his cup to drink. He told Peter, behind me, Satan, when he was trying to be arrested. You drink your cup. Find out God's will for you, not your will. And you'll be blessed more than you could imagine. So with that, we're going to sing a song that I call the Golden Calf Song. Because it's about people and suspicious minds. And they lose the faith. When someone's sitting there telling them, I love you, I love you. Look at what I did. Read the history books. I was there every step of the way. He's there every step of the way for you. Your suspicious minds are keeping you from where we want to go, which is be a great nation like we were intended for all. And there is a way, there is a plan, there is a blueprint that we have to read it, share it, and implement it. And with that, please join EcclesiaUSA.com. Share, like the videos. This message needs to get out. This book is for the average people to read. I have a video on a way to read it to help you, to make it make more sense, to where it lays out a little better for you. So with that, Yahweh, thank you. We love you and your greatness. Amen.